Hey everybody. Hey, welcome to our 11:15 panel with our professional athletes. And because of the strike outside, we're probably going to have some light attendance. So what we're more interested in doing is having a conversation with you people as well, since you're part of this community. So I was going to ask all of you to move to this front area so that we can see you, have a conversation with you when we start having this conversation. Because after our panel, what we'd like to do is talk to you and figure out what the hell's going on here and how we can help. So let me start. My name is Frank Shamrock, and I'm a former UFC champion, mixed martial artist, ass kicker, author extraordinaire, but I'm also a professional speaker, which is why I was probably asked to do this job today. And I'm also an activist for cannabis, because I've been using cannabis for the past 25 years and throughout my entire sports career, and it has been the absolute best life supplement for me, and it's helped me deal with my pain, my addiction, and everything else that I encountered throughout my career. But this is not really about me. It's about these also professional athletes who are taking a stand to speak about cannabis. And I'd like to introduce them, and then I'd like to have the conversation. So the first one is our OG, Marvin Washington. And he's a former American Football League defensive end who played 11 seasons with the NFL. He knows about pain. He's a cannabis activist. We're very proud to have him here today. And I've hung out with Marvin a few times. Yeah, thank you. He is a gentle giant and a very smart man. So if you have a chance to talk business with him, you'll be very lucky. I'd next like to introduce Riley D. Cote. Is it Cote?
Cote.
Cote is a former Canadian professional hockey player, and he's he's known as an enforcer. Played for the Philadelphia Flyers and played 8 seasons in the NHL. Sorry. I don't actually watch sports, so I should tell on myself today. The only sport I watch is fighting. So I just Wikipedia'd everything about 5 minutes ago, and then I took this role. So thank you for your patience. Right. Yeah. And our young guy, Nick Moody, I'd like to introduce him. He's an American football inside linebacker, and he's currently a free agent. He played for the San Francisco 49ers. Is that right? You played for the 49ers?
Yep. Yeah.
And the Seahawks, and he played college football at the Florida State University as a safety and a linebacker. Yeah. And we're going to talk today about high-impact sports and the recovery from it. Because if you haven't played professional sports, it just destroys your body. And it's really, really impactful, and you get terrible injuries. And the medicine to deal with that, and the knowledge to deal with that is somewhat antiquated. And I found throughout my career that the medicine given to me was highly addictive, and it led me on courses, and it led me to places, and it did things in my body that I did not like. So when I found cannabis and when I understood what cannabis was doing to me, I found the science, and I jumped all in. Let's talk about science. Riley, you've been in a enforcer position and fighting on the ice for a long time. You've taken a lot of injuries. What have you felt, and what has been your experience with cannabis, CBD, in particular to your brain, and what's impacted the most?
Yeah, I'm originally from Canada, and I've been a cannabis consumer from a young age, so I didn't really understand what it was really doing to me until I retired at the age of 28. I played 8 years of professional hockey, and when I turned pro at the age of 20, undrafted, I took on a different role within hockey, and that was the enforcer role in fighting. I was fighting 30, 35 times a year. So, if performance and anxiety wasn't enough, the anxiety of fighting one-on-one combat was a whole other layer of anxiety I never really understood, and that's when I really started understanding, the therapeutic and healing properties of cannabis. I was still, drinking a lot and doing a lot of destructive things, so I didn't really fully understand it. I didn't understand the science. There was no science really back then. But it wasn't until I retired at the age of 28 with a laundry list of physical injuries, residuals from concussions and the whole bit, that I really started researching cannabis, learning about the digestibility of the hemp protein, and really started learning about different phytocannabinoids and learning about CBD, and I started using CBD to mitigate some of my collateral damage from the trauma, the repeated head trauma, and just started understanding these different layers of cannabis and became extremely passionate. And it's a huge part of my life now. And I'm on the advocacy side of things, speaking publicly, but also on the business side of things. I mean, I just see it's the future of medicine, the future of sports medicine.
Yeah, well, I agree, but I've also got the microphone. Marvin, we were talking earlier in the back about just the miracles that we've seen, just both common and somewhat miraculous. But I met a young boy who started taking the oil and survived Crohn's disease. They sent him home to die. They were just like, go home and die. He started taking this oil, and within 6 months, I met him, talked to him. Wonderful boy. He was on a whole new path. Have you seen anybody or experienced or met anybody through your activism who've experienced that same thing?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of kids, but from a personal standpoint, it's my ex-teammates and peers. I haven't played football in almost 20 years, and I have ex-teammates and peers that are in the same situation. And I had a guy that hadn't played since 1994, and he was still taking, I think, 300 milligrams of Percocet today. And we got him on some CBD, and he cut down, and now he's off, and he's on a CBD regimen. And so that's the biggest, not miracle, recovery that I've seen. But I've seen that anecdotally with a lot of guys, a lot of my ex-teammates and peers that are still on that opiate regimen because they're still hurting from football. And then you give them on cannabis or hemp products, which are the same, which is the same plant. But they get off the opiates. And I played in, I would say, the dark ages because we didn't know anything about this, about a natural plant-based medicinal alternatives to opiates. But guys today, it's at the end of their fingertips. And so they know all about it. And a lot of guys, the current National Football League players, are medicating with cannabis, and I think that is progress. And true progress is going to come when the National Football Leagues really get behind this program and get a sensible cannabis program in, and I know that's coming. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, and I think it's going to be in 2020 when the CBA is up.
Let's hope so. Yeah, I agree. Nick, you're fresh in the game, so you're right in the mix of being injured, recovering, going through the process of healing your body. What has been your experience in the short term, and what are you feeling now in your body? Because you're right in the game.
Okay, so in the short term, I can say that, especially since I've actually took the time to educate myself better on like what is actually doing, what's going on inside my body when I take my CBD supplements or when I'm smoking. Because before it was more so like, all right, I'm a stressed out day, I'm gonna go home and smoke. Like we knew we were medicating, but it's like we didn't know what we were actually doing. And I was in the program, so I was there for a year and a half. I couldn't smoke. I had to go to the classes. I had to pee in the cup twice a week. They come knock on my door at 6 in the morning. So looking at it from that perspective, I realized that when I had it taken away from me, I realized how much of like a medicinal effect it had on me, not just a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint. Because I've seen it from not just myself, but other guys I've seen in the program that even had it worse than me. They literally get in the program and then they start resorting to other things. They start to drinking, they'll start doing the pills, and then you'll see a guy that was perfectly fine, normal. Next thing you know, he's damn near a full-blown alcoholic. And it's all because they try to demonize you for a plant. And now it's looking better. They raise the threshold level you need for the baseline to get a positive. They're talking about it more. I mean, I know certain coaches are open about it more, trainers and things like that. It's just more and more the older guys are educated more, so the front office people and the older trainers, the guys that tend to look at things the old school way, the more they're educated, I feel like the better they'll look out for the players in terms of bringing that aspect in instead of trying to just prescribe stuff that destroys our bodies. Like, I'm 28. I just had my final medical exam to give my line of duty, and then I'm finding out stuff's wrong with me I didn't even know. Torn labrums in the hips, no cartilage in my shoulder, chronically torn ligaments, and it's like I don't even feel it, and they got all this stuff in me. But then when I get my CBD, it's like I don't feel anything wrong with me.
Amen. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I had the same experience because when I retired, I had a 16-year career of cage fighting, and when I retired, I was just a mess. Like my whole body was just destroyed. And it took years of both working to fix my body and trying to rebalance it through exercise and therapy, and then medication, because I was in terrible pain. Like I really felt bad through the whole thing, because beating people up in a cage is pretty dangerous. But nothing more dangerous, I think, than the sports we're all playing. Because anytime you do something professionally and you put your body on the line, you risk everything. And that's one of our positions in activism is, this is a plant that grows on the earth like any other plant. There's literally no reason why we can't pick this plant or any plant and put it in our body, because every plant on this earth is for our bodies, because that's how it works. So the insanity of it is part of the reason why we're all here today, and the reason we need to keep having this conversation. And if I could talk about insanity for a minute, when you play a sport like mine and you get hit in the head and your head is damaged, your brain is moved or concussed, every time you do that, you damage your brain and your brain cells. And the problem is, over a term, you'll eventually damage your brain, and that's a scientific fact. And so if you play any contact sport where your brain gets hit, you then must put some substance or protectant in there. And the crazy part, the insane part is, our federal government has a patent on cannabis as a neuroprotectant. They have proof that it heals your brain from cellular damage, but yet it's federally illegal. That's insane, in my opinion, right? And if I were playing a sport that did that, I would put that in my brain, because that only makes sense. Have we tried these common sense arguments with any of the major leagues in sports, and what are their positions on the facts protecting your brain? Anyone?
Well,
Guys?
I've been talking to our Players Association for the last 5 years, and there has been progress, and that's why I'm hopeful and that in 2020, when the collective bargaining agreement is up, that there is going to be a sensible cannabis program that sort of models at the water with the levels that you can test positive at. And then so the NFL allows guys to take Ritalin and Adderall, which are performing enhancing drugs according to WADA, World Anti-Doping Association, because they give it under a TUE, therapeutic use exemption. I'm hoping at the very least that we have a CBD program in, and then with THC that they do it under a therapeutic use exemption, because the opiates, there are 20,000 former players, and they're 4 times as more likely to abuse opiates than general society. We know general society is getting their butt kicked with it. So you can imagine what it's doing to my former teammates and peers. So I think cannabis can go a long way, and PA knows this, because everybody talks about concussion, but the thing that keeps them up at night is the addiction of the former players, because they're getting calls from wives and girlfriends and parents of these players that are addicted to these opiates. And I think cannabis can solve the head issue in the NFL, and it can also solve the addiction issue.
And Riley, what about the NHL, the Hockey League?
Yeah, so much like Marvin, I've been speaking with the NHL Alumni Association mainly. It's just more of an entry point to the Players Association, but nonetheless, I can't say what LP, but one of the major LPs in Canada recently, they haven't announced yet, but are signing a deal with the NHL Alumni Association and doing research on the brain. So it's certainly progress. We're still years away to where I think we need to be, but from 3-4 years ago, it wasn't even a conversation. Like even talking about using cannabis just for pain or inflammation was a struggle. When you're talking about the brain, it seems like an oxymoron. Talking about cannabis and actually improving brain function and brain health. So it's going to take some time, but nonetheless, the conversations are there. The pieces are moving together, and it's baby steps.
Well, let's talk too about, as an athlete, this is something I suffered from, was the actual stigma of using cannabis. I was a sports broadcaster for CBS and Showtime, and it was absolutely spoken that you did not speak about it, if you'd used it or otherwise. It was absolutely not, like you did not say it. So as an athlete, and then moving into those roles, I kept it very close to my chest until it became legal in the state of California. And then I felt obligated to step forward and say, this is insane. Like, we should be doing something positive to move this, arcane law and this insane idea to a new position. And all of these plants, if you read the Bible, if you read everything, all of these plants are here for us. So there's no reason why we can't use them at our will for our human being and wellness. And let's talk about wellness. There are so many advances in cannabis now. If you see vendors, you meet people, there's so many different products out there, there's so many different ways to consume. The idea of smoking is slowly evaporating into smoke because there are so many different consumable ways. And guys, are there any ways, I'll ask you, Nick, is there any way that you consume that is maybe outside the box a little bit, or that might surprise or encourage people?
Yeah, actually, I did it. Once I started doing research and reading on the different treatments and the guys, their formulations and how they apply them, I kind of started messing around with stuff myself. Like, so other than smoking or vaping or dabbing, especially more so with the topicals, I would use the full spectrum creams and lotions or whatever ratio they were, and I look and see like what place you put them at for if you want like the local relief or if you want like a full body effect. So the different things like applying it to the bottom of your feet. That's one thing I do when I notice I get it. For as far as my pain and my joints and muscles and stuff like that, especially after training with my injuries and stuff in the past, that's one method I realize is really effective in terms of like just overall body relief. That's my main outside. That's the only really outside the box way I got. Other than that, I'm a normal guy. I'm a regular smoker.
Just regular smoking.
Yeah.
How about you, Riley?
No outside of the box thinking for me. I just I can't get away from the dry flower. I do like to microdose in ingestibles, but other than that, I mean, I try to get in the vape thing, and I understand there's probably some signs that it's arguably a little bit better for your lung function. But I mean, I've been smoking for so long. I used to have really bad asthma. My asthma has disappeared. There's something primal about fire and plants, you know what I mean? I mean, so for whatever reason, it's for me, that's just my personal belief system. But I have learned to respect, edibles. When I had a couple bad experiences when I was younger, overconsumed, and I think once you master your dose, it's a perfect ally.
Yeah. How about you, Marvin?
I'm a CBD guy. Topicals, water, tinctures. I try to infuse my body with it and microdose with it every day. Because a lot of my peers that I play with, they can't run, they can't work out because their body hurts so much, and I'm proud of the fact that I can run and work out every day, and I know it's because of CBD. And I tell everybody, what does CBD do for me? It's like oil for the Tin Man. It helps me move better after playing in the trenches for 11 years and having my fingers misformed and broken and shoulders reconstructed and torn ligaments and tendons and what have you. I had like 8 major surgeries and like 5 minor surgeries and what have you. So it helps me. It helps me get to the point where I feel like I have homeostasis. My body is really functioning at its highest level.
I recently tried dabbing, I should tell on myself, and it was quite the experience. I was not really prepared for the volume of elation that I received, and I have not gone back. So to note your edible experience, tiptoe lightly into your medicine because it is medicine, and you wouldn't take a giant cup of cough syrup or otherwise. So you got to find your path, and you got to find your medicine. And with that, we've been having a lot of luck in the mental health care space with cannabis. And we've been practicing and using different types of very high sativa, very lemony type sativas for depression and PTSD. We've been getting very good results and very good responses. So anybody that wants to talk about that, I would love to talk about that, because my brother is bipolar and suffers from mania. And one of the things that brings him into reality is this sativa thing. So it's an ongoing experiment for the past 15 years, and at this stage he is incredibly high functioning and have an amazing life because of cannabis. So tiptoe through your medicine and find the right one, and don't eat a giant edible before a family setting, that's for certain. One of the things that everyone asks me is, how do you get this stuff, and how does this thing work? So I wanted to share my personal experience because I live in California. I just hit the app and it comes right to my door, and it's extraordinary. And I tell that to people around the world, and they think I'm insane, that someone brings it right to my door. But I wanted to explain that to people, because with technology and with this medicine, they're converging. We're seeing the technology and the medicine, and they're all coming together like this. So I encourage you guys to study the technology behind cannabis and what's really in it. And then if you really want to educate yourself, study the marketing for the past 40 years, and you'll see how we got to this position of basic, it being illegal. About the law, is there anything going on in your individual states or locations with the law? that locally is moving it forward. But Nick, you're in Florida?
Yeah, I'm in Florida. The only thing they've really done so far is decriminalize the amount that if you're caught in possession with, it's 28.5 grams, decriminalized if you're underneath that. As far as people getting arrested and things like that, not so much. I mean, the police individually, they're more lenient, and public consumption is more lenient too, especially in areas that were really against it before, but generally it's not too much different.
I think, Rob, you're in New Jersey also, right?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
You're Pennsylvania?
We have a medical cannabis program and an industrial hemp program. I think they're working on the rec. Philly and a few other counties have decriminalized, but there's still some prohibition going on there. I mean, there's a lot of learning and teaching, but it's progress. I mean, it's a new program just in this past year, so they're moving.
And I'm in New Jersey. They're expanding their medical program, and probably at the end of 2019, they have a full adult use program, and then New York is looking at it too. They're going around and having these listening sessions with the governor and talking about expanding their adult use program. And I just want to say, it's happening state by state, county by county, but it's going to take time because, to me, this thing really started in earnest in 2012 when Oregon and Colorado went, adult use. So that's only 6 years. That's like the Wright brothers taking off a Kitty Hawk. We're still cranking the plane up, man. So I look forward to the future and this thing going into, the jet age and the space age, and it's going to be wonderful because, as I was telling them in the green room, once we get the billions of dollars of research and development in this country behind this plant, we're going to really see what it can do. And because we've been medicating for 10,000 years with this plant, with plant-based medicine, we're going to go back to that. And it's going to, we know the indications that it helps out with now. It's going to, I think it can heal this country, and I think it can solve the safety issues that are in professional sports.
And one thing about Florida, I feel, is because it's such a hotbed for anti-aging, there's a large elderly community there. It's a real thirst for knowledge as far as not just CBD, but full plant and full spectrum products as well. Because right now the CBD products are readily available, but for THC you got to go to the doctor, get a prescription, then you'll pick it up at a dispensary, and it's like going to CVS and Walgreens. They got a little cotton in the bottle, and they tell you how to use it. So I mean, it's getting there, but it's more people as far as the medical professions that are really, really trying to get more education on it so that way they can administer it to their patients instead of giving them opiates, especially for the elderly communities down there.
Yeah, and I spoke to quite a few dispensary owners I live in Los Angeles, so it would be in the Los Angeles area. They were all shocked at the age group of the new consumer, and that is a much older audience. They're very specific with an ailment looking for a medicine. And so the social idea is definitely changing. The audience is growing and appears to be aging. I don't know if that's a good thing idea for it, but the baby boomers are looking for better medicine is the summation, and they're turning to cannabis. And so that's a huge boon for us, and it's also a great movement, a social movement, because these are the people that are out, casting votes and moving media and making decisions. So it's definitely growing. One of the things that I've seen in the space as well is a growth in professionalism and business, which I really enjoy because I was in the business of fighting, and that's really dangerous, so I was very serious about business. So that's the business in cannabis is maturing very, very quickly. And what I see happening is there'll be some roll-ups coming, there'll be some consolidation coming. So, if you're building a brand or a product, keep building your brand and product. Stay focused on your mission and building that quality product, because this is a wonderful space of growth and opportunity, besides it being tremendous medicine. My daughter is 10 years old and doesn't know. Hello? Someone's turning off my microphone. Is that a sign, David? No? God doesn't want me to talk today. My daughter's 10 years old, and she doesn't know that I smoke cannabis. She knows that I smell funny, and I'm happy, and I live a really good life. But very soon, they're going to sit her down in school and have a conversation with her, and she's going to come back to me and ask me some questions. And I'm going to tell her what I know and what I believe, and she's then going to be educated. I'm wondering if you guys had a similar situation in your family, and/or anticipate one. I don't know if you're there yet, Nick.
Yeah, well, mine is 6, so she doesn't really ask any questions like that.
Yeah.
My friends' kids are around the same age. Some of them know, and they're like, "Oh, well, Daddy's smoking. I go outside. Daddy, go outside," or like, something like that. But nothing. Nobody's really so far reserved and letting their kids know we're trying to hide it from their kids, especially us. I mean, I'm younger, so the oldest in most people's kids are is like 8. Most of my friends, so.
You're young.
My youngest is 20 and sophomore in college, and my other 2 are 23 and 25, and they're out of college, and college graduates, and they smoke cannabis. And the thing that I want to, when I have this conversation with them, I just tell them the facts about it. Because when I was their age and younger, we were lied to. We were lied to by our teachers, we were lied to by our government, we were lied to by everybody about this plant. Just tell them the truth, and tell them, it's not for kids, it's an adult use. I hate to use the term, recreational, it's adult use. So, don't lie to your kids about it because, you've been lied to for almost 80 years. Tell them the truth.
And I have a 3-year-old and a 19-month-old, and I mean, I don't consume in front of them, but they're using cannabis-based products on a daily basis, whether they know it or not. I mean, we use CBD diaper creams and any sort of topicals for their scratches and bruises, and they consume hemp milk and hemp seeds in their cereal and stuff like that. So I mean, as they grow older and are able to kind of grasp a little bit about this stuff, I probably start educating them, but. It's too early for me right now, but eventually I'm not gonna hide it from them because I want to be honest with them. I mean, look at the destructive substances around, and the alcohol problem in the West, probably globally. But I got 2 young daughters. I mean, I know what it's like to be around the party, and I know what it's like to be a dude. And it's a dangerous place, and people disrespect these substances, and it's dangerous. So I mean, if you want to be honest with the conversation, I'd certainly rather having my girls consume cannabis at a young age than dipping into the alcohol. So I just, it's going to be a learning curve, and I think when the time is right, probably, I don't know, probably 11, 12 years old, once they start getting into that teenage years, I mean, you have to have that conversation, just be honest with them, because I think by then it'll be so normalized, it's gonna be totally different than when we went through the prohibition days, and everyone was telling us what they thought was right, but it was, like Marv said, we'd been fundamentally misled, we were lied to.
Well, I got kids 20 years apart, so I did this 20 years ago too. And it didn't go as well 20 years ago. I'll tell you the story because it's a funny story. We were actually at the park, and there were kids on this big rock, and they were up smoking pot. And so I was walking with my son and my girlfriend, and my son turns to my girlfriend, who didn't know I smoked, and says, "Hey, Dad, that smells just like your medicine." And my girlfriend looked at me and went, and that's how she found out that I was a consumer, and that's how my son found out as well. We're going to lead that one a little. We're going to guide that one a little better this time around. Is there anything else that you guys want to just say as athletes, consumers, activists, since we have a stage, before we ask some questions and let the folks talk to us?
I mean, as far as the athletes go, the biggest thing is, I mean, since I'm just recently done, I know a lot of guys, they're eager to find out different ways they can treat themselves and medicate themselves while not getting so high or trying to get high at all. So actually, being based out of Miami, I have all my friends asking me all the time now, because everybody trains down there. So guys are like, oh, it's like, Moody, hey man, what capsules can I take? What topicals can I take? Or should I vape? Or like, oh, what strains does your boy have? So I need something that's going to help my back. So now it's kind of, it turned into like, when we go to training, it's like the whole first half, and we're not actually working out. Everybody's asking me all these different questions, or like, people DM me like, hey man, since I see you right there, like, do you know any companies that might make something that can help me with this? Because even my trainer I'm with now, Pete Bomarito, his daughter, she has juvenile arthritis. So she's 2 years old, so they treat her with topicals and sublingual tinctures. So he was always the guy, when we come in and if we smell like smoke or we were high, he'd be like, oh, if you guys can't smoke, it's terrible for your bodies, yada, yada, yada. So we're like, no, Pete, it's not, it helps us recover. And he's like, I'm like, look, the best athletes that you train, all of us here, everybody smokes. So I was like, whatever they're telling you at these medical conferences or these strength and conditioning conferences about the negative effects of cannabis on athletes' bodies is wrong. So now he's completely made a 180 and he gets his daughter. I brought him some stuff back so he can treat his daughter's arthritis, and he's interested in learning as much as he can about the business, about the industry, and the effect of the cannabis plant has on the body in terms of recovery and performance as well.
Nice. Marvin?
Yeah, well, to piggyback off of Nate, what he's saying is that athletes can bring a lot of light and attention to any issue, and I think we're going to do it here, but we need to do it in a responsible way, because to me, I'm just a steward and a placeholder, because I think the dynamic athlete that's really going to take cannabis mainstream is probably in junior high right now. This is so young, so we just have to be responsible and educate people and stick to the facts. I don't debate anybody about cannabis, I just stick to the facts. And tell your friends and tell your family about it, because only 10% of this country knows anything about THC and CBD. The rest of them, when you mention cannabis or hemp or whatever, they think, Cheech and Chong or Reefer Madness and all that. That's not it. We all went to college, we all achieved the highest level that we could achieve, and most of us were doing cannabis during that time. So this is something that, just tell the truth about it and educate, because the public needs education, because everybody's not in California. You go back to Texas, where I'm from, and my aunt thinks I'm a drug dealer. I'm with 5 different companies, and she thinks I'm selling drugs and gonna go to jail. But it's just education, man. That's what I want to emphasize with people: education and stick to the facts.
Yeah, and I think, as we all know, there's many layers to this cannabis space, and I think, traditionally with the new age cannabis use, it's very reactive medicine. We have to be almost on our deathbed to feel worthy of this plant. And I think there's this whole other conversations of, whether it's THC or CBD-based products. So there's this whole wellness and holistic approach to cannabis. Preventative medicine, maintenance, restorative. And not feeling guilty, when you're using these products, not feeling like a criminal and normalizing it that way. I mean, there's a huge educational component to, the science, to the more the reactive medicine, the disease states. But I think, taking ownership in our own health and being accountable, and, I think, cannabis really is the epitome of the recovery process. You're able to manage stressors, anxieties, inflammation, pain, and sleep. And to me, whether you work a 9 to 5 or you're an athlete or anything in between, that's recovery. And you got to wake up in the morning, and you're supposed to wake up and do that all over again, instead of chasing the dragon with these destructive, toxic stimulants to keep up with the Joneses. So I think there's this huge other part of cannabis that we're really not talking about, the spiritual component, keeping the integrity and the culture within cannabis. I think there's a place for all these things, but there's many layers to this, and I think just the wellness component, we need to really hit that one home and educate. I mean, microdosing, kind of looking at cannabis, CBD products as a multivitamin, a daily essential type of deal. It's going that direction. It's going to take some time, but I think we got to get out of this easy thinking of just substituting big pharma with cannabis in a reactive sense. Like, grab the bull by the horns, take some ownership into it, and be your own doctor in a sense.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your activism and being so outspoken and so well spoken about it. I want to take some questions from our crowd, from our audience, because I want to know what's going on, and we've got an amazing opportunity to have 3 superstars like this who are so passionate about the space.
Hi, I'm a manufacturer of a topical company. What could we do to help you guys? How do we get resources and develop the resources that you need to help you with this cause?
To me, there's strength in numbers, and there's so many guys, reach out to different groups or athletes, what have you, but there are so many guys. For us 3, there's probably about 30 other guys that are looking for their entry point into this industry. Reach out to a guy and try to associate with an athlete. And I think if you're at topicals, that's something that all athletes that we all take is a topical. I think that's great, but try to align yourself with somebody. And because we're looking for, and a lot of guys are looking, like I said, looking for an entry point into this. And there are different organizations like Athletes for Care, which is an organization that Riley and I, are part of, that we're going down there and we're fundraising and we're trying to change the stigmas of athletes in cannabis. And so get with somebody, like I said, in your local town or in your local state that maybe has a name or whatever, and give them the product and let them try the product, because everybody that tries topicals and whatever, they work. They take away the pain from the bumps and bruises. I can tell when it's going to rain with my fingers and what have you. Not anymore because I don't have that pre-arthritic pain. So just get with somebody and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. One of the things that's really just helping the whole cannabis move forward is the push in professionalism. So connect yourself with professional people, find good activism, but keeping the integrity is super important right now, because when it explodes and when all of the other crazy things happen, it still needs to be a sacred plant that we're using as personal medicine. Another questions? Here's one over. Oh, go.
Yeah,
go ahead.
right. Do you think the NFL has a hurdle with their image because of maybe the late 80s, excuse me, the late 80s, and maybe the connection with NWA, Snoop, the use of cannabis, the Raiders right here locally, that party was started, and now you have to try to break down that wall and say, hey, this is actually not the party. This is for medical use. This is for how we can recover.
I think a lot of that stems from the people who are controlling the league. Like if you look at the league, the guys that are control, it's mostly guys with a conservative point of view, and the majority of the NFL's fan base is the same way. So in that looking at it that way, you have to realize at the same time these people we've been totally against this the whole time. So with them, their thing is the dollar is what matters the most. So until it's the point where they feel comfortable that their majority of their fan base is accepting of that, then they'll turn around and be just as openly accepting, because with them it's about the bottom line. Like you see guys get punished, don't even have any proof of anything, and they're suspended 4 games, and it's like, oh well, we actually got proof that nothing happened, but we already said this. So because it's all about us making our image, we have to look the right way and appeal to our fan base. So that's the main thing I see with the league. So until then, that's what I see it looking like.
And it is still federally illegal.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest.
That's the baseline. Until it's not federally illegal, it's still federally illegal. That's the problem. Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Great.
Go
thank
stand
you.
up, please, if you could, so we can take a look at you.
Thank you.
No,
I think we're a pretty tight group in here. We can hang. First of all, thank you for coming forward. All of participants on the stage seem to have a level of celebrity through past sporting events and current activism. And I just wanted to get a feel for some of the state programs and advocacy programs. What type of reception are you getting in these league administration type positions and other community positions, whether it's in new states coming online, the problems we've had in Florida, and the Canadian developments? What type of reception is your celebrity status carrying forward?
Well, I can start with that because I'm usually in front of a microphone, and they always invite me to do so. I know we're moving the message. I know that we're making impact. I know that people are opening their minds, whether that's locally, step by step. The problem remains it's federally illegal. So at the end of the line, they're like, great, but it's federally illegal, and the door just shuts. Yeah, well, it just depends on where you are, and depends on where the social feeling and status and legality is. I travel all over the United States. In some states, California, we're rock stars. They love us. They want us to talk all the time. Some states are like, do not talk about that here. It just depends on where you're at. But the social majority still supports it's federally illegal and do not do it. And that's what we're pushing against.
Nice. Yeah, I just want to know, how far has the UFC made any headway in the past couple of years? 'Cause I'm still a little bitter over the Nate Diaz debacle a few years ago after he got suspended. How far has the UFC come since then, and what's the outlook?
Well, they use the WADA testing, which is a pretty now sports standard for all testing. And I think they allow a certain amount off season, and then there's another amount when you're under contract for a fight. But I'm not as familiar because I retired for all that stuff. And back in the day, you just had to pass one test. So I would just stop smoking 3 weeks out and just have the worst 3 weeks of my life. And then I would go destroy somebody and go right back to it. So that's how it worked for me. I wasn't bound by any of the leagues or anything, so I had a much gentler journey.
With the league as far as the testing standpoint and guys' use, guys still know the schedule. So we have our annual test. And then once you pass your annual test, you're good to go for the rest of the year. So you can do whatever you want. So I feel like as guys educate themselves, like they can treat it the same way they always have. When you get your test, you can smoke the rest of the year. If like I get my test, I'm free to use and medicate myself whichever way I feel is best for me.
Hey, thanks you guys for coming across the line. I know that's had to be tough today because you know they're organized outside and picketing against you know this system that we're all operating on in this country today. And so to come across and understand that we're all here for a greater good, to organize and spread this education, we appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
I work a lot in senior care and dementia care, and there's 4 big drivers that we are aware of today that result in dementia in later age, and head trauma is one of those 4 key drivers. I'm interested in something you mentioned about the healing properties of cannabis on head trauma.
Well, I know about the science because at one of these events, I ran into the neuroscientist who filed the patent. And he explained the whole thing. He was hired by the government to study the effects of Agent Orange on our brain cells. And through the course of that, he studied cannabis and realized the cannabis was healing the cell. And so he just took the studies and filed the patent and got a patent on it. I've used it my whole career, like every day. And I got punched in the head every day for 16 years as for a living. So I really, truly believe that it protects your brain. I don't have enough science on it. But the facts say it does, and I think we just need more studies. Do you guys have any more science, or do you know if there's any more developments in that area?
There are 22,000 papers and 11,000 peer-reviewed papers about cannabis, and I think most of the research, particularly with Alzheimer's and dementia, is coming out of Israel and Dr. Raphael Meshulam and his team. There is information out there because football players, we're like, here we go again, and we're like 3 times more likely to get Alzheimer's, 4 times more likely to get dementia. So this is something that is very dear to me because I've had friends that have had the PET scan, and even myself, everybody's brain is, you know, it's not normal. And so I believe that, you know, like I said before, that cannabis can go a long ways into helping guys have a quality of life. And it also can be preventative, so the future generations don't have these issues of CTE and head traumas that our generation had. So it's happening, it's out there. Just look, and there's some wonderful doctors and cannabis nurses that can educate you more than we could.
Yeah, Israel is literally leading the world. They've got hundreds and hundreds of patents in development. They're so far ahead because they have no stigma on it. They're just like, oh, let's study it. It's a great plant. So I encourage you to pursue as much information there, too.
Charles Frazier, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, former player as well. Just wanted to ask this a specific question for Nick and Marvin. The situation happened with Reuben Foster. Went to Alabama, got, you know, busted for, you know, for marijuana, but he plays for the 49ers. So this is more of like an in-league question. What is your opinion about players who play in different states where it's not legalized, they're from a place where, you know, like California would be the Rams, Chargers, Raiders, whatever, Niners, and where it is legal? So should they be punished in terms of, should, you know, they've already, even though they're in the state, should they be punished, and also should they be drug tested?
I feel like when it comes to that, you just got to know where you are, because I'm always in Florida, so I always knew, like, I got to be careful. If I'm going to have it with me, I got to make sure that if I get pulled over, it's not on me. Or if I got in the car, I got to make sure that I don't do anything dumb. It's just the facts are, certain places it's still not accepted, and they're going to bother you the most about it. So just the fact that you're in California, if you go back to Georgia, Alabama, or Florida, they don't care. So it's more so like you just got to just take the reality of it and be like, I can't, it's not the same. You got to remember that too. Because I remember when I first got back from the Niners, my first rookie offseason, I get back to Miami, I'm feeling the same way I did out here. So like I go to my friend's house, I take it with me, we go out somewhere, I'm like, here. I'm like, oh, they're like, this is not California, bro. Like you can't just hand it to me out in public. And I'm like, oh, I forgot. Like I'm so used to just it being so open and everybody does it that like I got to remember, I got to we got to tuck it away and remember where you are and your surroundings, and that way you don't have to put yourself in those situations.
I just think like this is silly, and our kids and grandkids are going to look back at this policy and kind of laugh at us. This thing is going to be rectified in a few years, and in 20 years, like I said, it's going to be laughable. I think the NFL suspending guys for 4 games and taking game checks for guys over a plant is degrading and it's humiliating, and I'm more than ready for it to end. I'm more than ready for it to end, because you have guys, and Nick knows this, that have done worse than smoke a blunt or what have you, and they get 2 games or they get 3 games. But a guy that gets caught, you know, smoking marijuana, you know, he's getting a 4-game suspension automatically. But a guy can, you know, have a domestic incident with his girlfriend or his wife, he might get a couple of games. So I just think it's stupid. I think the policy is stupid, and it's going to change, you know, but, you know, that's the way it is. That's the way it was, but it's not going to be in the future.
And what about the testing? You guys think they should be testing?
The testing, to me, we used to
And
call
is
it
cannabis testing? Is it just for cannabis?
Yeah, it's the same thing. The guys know when the test is coming, and we used to call it an intelligence test, because you know when the test is coming. You know, so most of the guys that during my era, they would stop smoking at the end of June, and then get the test in end of July or middle July, and then after that it's 420. I hate to say it, but you know, on the federal, it's still federally prohibited, and the NFL is going to follow that. So I guarantee you, Ruben is getting that knock on the door Monday at 6 a.m.
Yeah,
and Friday.
And the thing is, they don't realize that when they
in the program.
They got you in the program, that just puts more stress on you. Because I was even comparing it to my cousin. I had a cousin who was on probation for a felony, and I'm like, you get to smoke every day. I'm up here every day knocking on my door at 6 in the morning, asking me where I am. I got to give them updates when I'm going to eat at a certain time of day, so that way they can follow me, so that way, or sometimes they just follow me around throughout the whole day until I'm ready to go. So it just doesn't make sense as far as like the lack of freedom there. But if you want to go have a drink, you can get blackout drunk. And then if you notice, when you see most guys get in trouble, that's what state they're in when they get in trouble. Like I've seen guys not get in any trouble, then when they drink, they're completely different people.
The whole thing about that's another humiliation, is like you're on vacation with your family and this guy's calling you trying to give you a drug test. Yeah, it's like, dude, I'm on vacation.
Yeah, I'm out eating dinner in Miami Beach with a friend, his fiance and her dad, and next thing I know, they're calling me and I'm in the restaurant. This dude walks in with his little backpack and his ID badge, and he's like, puts his little glasses down. He's like, you know who I am, Nick. And like, I still see him every now and then in Miami. He's like, aren't you glad you don't have to see me anymore? Like, yeah, I don't miss you knocking on my door at 5:45.
Maybe you have a question over here.
I have the same basic question about, specifically about reversal of CTE. And so I understand that there's a lot of research out there, but I was wondering if maybe you could give me the name of the person who filed that patent, just something to go on where, you know, it's a lot of information to wade through.
Yeah. Why don't you see me off stage and I'll get it for you? Because I got his number. I talked to the guy a few times. I'm a super nerd about the brain, so I picked his brain. Because I had this theory about fighting that, and I taught this to my students because I didn't want them to hurt their brains. And so my theory was that your brain is Jell-O, and it's in a bowl. And every time you shake that Jell-O, it breaks apart and it comes off the sides. And that was my Jell-O theory. And I would tell my students that, so you can never get hit in the brain because you're going to hurt your brain. And so I asked this neuroscientist about my theory, and he goes, oh yeah, you're absolutely right, but it gets worse. There's sharp points inside your brain, behind your eyes, in all different areas. So not only are you impacting your brain, but you're poking holes in it every time you hit your head. And I was like, well, thanks for the update. I'm glad I'm retired. I'll get you his name off stage. Thanks. We got time for just a few more questions, and then we'll close it out.
For any of you For high performance athletes, some of the benefits that you're talking about are pretty clear in terms of recovery and pain reduction and so forth. But I'm wondering, is there a downside to cannabis use? Like if guys are smoking instead of taking edibles, does it affect lung capacity? Or if guys are getting high every day, does it affect energy long term? Is that something that athletes have to balance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think cannabis is a substance that needs to be respected. So you clearly can abuse cannabis all the way down to refined sugar. So I think there needs to be a respect factor there, absolutely. And finding, it's individualized medicine, finding your dose and seeing what works best for you. Like, how deep do you want to sleep? You know what I mean? If you're 100, 150 milligrams of THC is going to put you in a different dimension of sleep versus something lower than that. So you want to wake up not feeling groggy. There is a threshold. If you pass it, you're going to be a little bit hungover. So again, that's a respect factor, and just identifying what combinations and what products work the best for you. I think that's as a human being, we're trying to work on self-mastery, and as an athlete, you're trying to find, you're trying to find your dose and trying to find what works best for you. So I think that's on the individual. But again, we see it. There's a lot of people that disrespect cannabis. But in the athlete community, they're all about performance and recovery. So if you're focusing on those two things, finding that perfect balance is key.
Yeah, and I think the old. I can say from a personal standpoint, I never felt affected physically from smoking. I smoked for 25 years, won multiple world championships, and was a super athlete. I never felt affected by it in any way whatsoever, in the lung capacity or in that area. So just my personal experience.
I think it's like an individual thing too, because I know different guys, and some smoke a little bit before, some don't. Some can't handle it; they'll go to sleep, or they can't focus. And some guys, you'd be surprised how much they consume before they go out there, and you watch them play, and you'll never think. They'll be like, "Oh man, like that guy's amazing. Like it's no way he's a user." And that's little do you know. So it's an individual thing, and in terms of whatever method you decide to go about doing it, because I've seen guys try to experiment and kind of overdo it a little bit, and then we got a game. And we're kind of worried, is he gonna be able to take care of his responsibility? Is the edge gonna get set? So it's just, you gotta be responsible and know what you're doing, and kind of educate yourself and do a little bit of experimenting with starting off in smaller doses, like he said.
Question?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here, because as an educator, I can tell you with a credential that I'm very aware of the stigma, and even being here, I'm afraid to stand up and turn around. But I'm wondering if anyone has approached anybody in the field of education to come forward and help, because we're vested in preventing future injuries and removing the stigma involved.
I have spoke to our local community, and this is a very odd story. I live in Simi Valley, California, outside of Los Angeles, and we have the largest per capita of law enforcement officers in our city than any other city in the United States. And we are not allowed any cannabis in our city, even though the city voted for it unanimously. So I've tried to speak to educators, but it's a zero conversation in my town because there's zero tolerance.
I think it might be a little bit too early, but it's definitely going to come. Right now, we talk to, and mostly, well, speaking from personal experience, I talk to doctors and nurses and want them to get educated about it, because they're not teaching about the endocannabinoid system in medical school. And this is something that regulates all of the systems in our bodies, and they're ignorant about it. But I think it's eventually, like I said, in 10, 15 years or shorter than that, then it's going to be the educators that are educating their kids, because, I learned about the evil effects of cannabis through elementary school and the teachers and the films that they were showing us. So I think in about 10 years, it'll be the other way, and you're telling them about the medicinal benefits of this plant and how to use it responsibly when they're an adult.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm Dr. Kent. Thank you for sharing your personal experiences, but I would like to ask specifically medically for you guys. Have you been following your PET scans? Have you been looking at the impact of using cannabis over time and, you know, documenting personally any changes?
I've been keeping track of the changes I've had personally, especially since the time when I was out of the drug program, so I was able to use again. And then one thing I did notice, especially since I upped my CBD intake, once I learned more about it and decided to go find more CBD products, I noticed that I have more like mental clarity, and my short-term memory is better than it was as soon as I was done playing. And it takes me less time to do, I guess, like problem solving. I'm faster. It's easier to do. It's quicker. Brain function, I feel like it's quicker. It's easier for me to retain things too.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not only with CBD and going and getting a PET scan every 6 months, but it's changing my diet and exercise. I think it's helped me. You know, with my diagnosis, I'm just trying to stay at this level that I am, and I feel like I'm doing that through cannabis, hemp, diet, and exercise. Excuse me?
Peptides.
In what form?
We need them. Love it.
We'll talk offline.
Thank you, Doc.
I'm Robert Klein. I've been a grower for 27 years. Just want to say that if you ever get pulled over by the police, you tell the ossifer your best Shaggy impersonation, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. But son, there's a burnt brooch sitting on your leather seat. Hey, my window was down, somebody threw it in. It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
That's sound advice. Thank you, sir. We have time for one last question, and then we're going to say goodbye.
Thanks again, guys, for being here. Quick question, and you kind of hit on this earlier, but something that was said triggered this thought. You were saying that athletes that are in middle school going into high school now, it's going to be a lot more normalized for them going forward. You know, how would you personally talk to coaches or things like that? Because, you know, if you guys are in the NFL and you got certain shoes on, you got certain pro combat gear on, they're going to go cop that. Probably same with NFL, same with fight sports. How do you phrase a responsible message to the athletes that want to emulate you?
Just state the facts and follow the science, and don't overblow what cannabis can do, because, I mean, CBD can do, particularly for football players in high school and junior high. It acts as an antioxidant and a neuroprotectant. It's a great anti-inflammatory because 90% of injuries come from inflammation in your body. CBD is going to do the same thing for a 14-year-old football player in Michigan that it's going to do for a 28-year-old professional football player in San Francisco. It's going to act as an antioxidant and a neuroprotectant for the brain. It's going to be great for anti-inflammatory and rest and recovery. That's where I see this is going, and that's where I'm trying to take this down to the grassroots level and talk to Little League coaches and talk to junior high coaches and talk to high school coaches. And the Little League coaches, I'm telling them, take these guys out the helmet. You know, there's no reason for you to be banging your head at 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 years old when your brain is still developing. You know, you don't need a helmet on to learn how to catch a football, throw a football, to run a route, or even to tackle. Go back to rugby-style tackling, and that's one of my big push is to get these kids out these helmets until they're, you know, in junior high or high school.
Well, guys, thank you for your time today and your activism and your professionalism. Thank you guys for coming. This has been our panel on recovery, professional athletes, and kicking ass through cannabis. So thank you all for coming.